Hello and welcome to Driven by Doing podcast. Today we have Ash Coleman from Oakland, California. Ash, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So I heard a lot of things about you from Lexi and so many of your colleagues that you closely work with. And I was so fascinated with your background and great things that you're working on. And you're head of diversity and inclusion at Credit Karma. So
I
there are a lot of
am.
things that I learned about you on your profile and definitely wanted to dive deep in. So before even we dive into your career and like where did your story begin? Like, where are you originally from, and where are you now? So, definitely wanted to deep dive in a little bit about your background as well.
Sure. I'm not too far from home. I grew up down in Southern California. My family's from the LA area. And yeah, I think the origins of the story really stem from the South. So both of my parents are from the South, Mississippi and Alabama, and moved to California by way of the military. And that's where I was born. And that's where I was raised. And from there, just decided at the age of 16, 17 to go out and explore the world. So I went to college and I was able to do some entrepreneurship and then fell into tech. And from tech, now I'm in DEI. So it's that's the short form.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to dive in further as we go.
Awesome. So I also saw like you did your bachelor's at Brigham Young University. So I had an opportunity to come to BYU last year, competing
Nice.
with all the other entrepreneurs from around the world. So I had an
Uh-huh.
opportunity to represent University of Memphis at BYU last year in the International Business Model Competition.
Yeah.
So I came there. It was just phenomenal. I had great fun. Just
Hmm.
the beautiful campus and the whole
Gorgeous
scene.
campus.
It's just gorgeous. The Provo, Utah, I just fell in love with the city, and I mean, I just love Utah. Every time I go there, it's just a great feeling that I'm somewhere in the world. So that's
It's
just
a great
awesome.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you so since you're from California, Southern California, and now
Mhm.
you got a bachelor's, like what was your experience at BYU back then?
Oh heavens, my experience of BYU, that's a rather layered question. And it's layered because for those who are listening and maybe can't see me, is I am a Black American. And when people think of Utah, I believe that that's one of the furthest things away from their brain.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of ironic that we talk about what I've gotten up to when it comes to diversity, but really some of the origins of the thoughts I had around diversity started at BYU.
Mhm.
I was at BYU studying neuroscience and then later German linguistics and literature. And was at the time of enrollment, I was one of 85 Black students on campus.
Wow.
Out of a 30,000 student campus that is a transient campus, people travel in and out to attend. But the population of Black folks at the campus was rather small. And so working with groups like BSU, Black Student Union, and just finding the community there was really important to my success as a student at BYU. And so really started to craft or hone the thoughts I have around diversity and the necessity of being open and welcoming to different cultures and communities. And as we just spoke about, Utah is a beautiful place and has so much to offer. And I wish that more folks like myself would go there and really take in all of the beauty from a nature perspective, but also BYU is an amazing university. There's so much incredible learning that can be had there. And having access to that is one of my biggest hopes for the future for Black women like myself, as well as other underrepresented individuals in Utah. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it was a great time. I graduated successfully, and I stayed in Utah a few more years before leaving. But it was a great part of who I am today. And by no means is it something that I would ever hop over in explaining my experience and how I got where I am today.
Wow. So that's just amazing that you're like going back to your BYU days and then trying to see what it looks like. And now you got a bachelor's degree from BYU. And did you know already like what you wanted to do for the rest of your life once you got a bachelor's degree? Like tell us that piece of it.
Absolutely not. So after BYU, I actually went to culinary school. at Utah Valley University. So UVU, it had just transitioned to a university at the time. It was a state school and transitioned while I was there, and went and got my culinary degree. So one of the things around college isn't always accessible from a financial perspective for people like myself. And I actually worked all 4 years that I was in college. And one of the things that I learned early on was hospitality. I worked at Cold Stone Creamery and birthday cakes, made cakes and wedding cakes. It eventually spanned to wedding cakes and a number of other things. And so throughout my college career, I worked at a bank, but I also did some independent catering for myself and for those clients that I had back then that came by word of mouth. People found out that I could make cakes, and so I'd make them for weddings, and that helped pay for my education. And after BYU, went to culinary school and kind of sealed the deal. So now I'm a licensed chef, give or take, and just went down that route for a little bit, mostly because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And honestly, the experience that I was getting along the way was leadership experience, how to be entrepreneurial, how to be quick on my feet. I think when we think about getting to the graduation day and knowing what to do, a lot of folks are in that same position where they really just don't. And I really prize having jumped to UVU to get that degree because it gave me a minute to relax. Even though I was in school, it gave me a place where I felt at home in the kitchen, doing things that I love to do while I tried to figure out what the rest of my life looked like.
That's just an amazing transition, and the way that you took that to your heart and had that experience. And you have a master, a degree in culinary arts, and now you're a chef as well. And then you transition into quality engineer, where
I
you
did.
that was a quick transition, right? Like walk us through that journey. Like how did you get that opportunity, and like do you know what you're signing up for, or do you just randomly pick that?
No, so the story goes, I fell into tech, and I know that that's a controversial term to use in technology, but the reality is that I did. And I had served an LDS mission after I graduated from culinary school, and I was in New York City, and I decided to stay there after my mission had concluded. And within that time, I had picked up technology, and this was nothing that was in any way, shape, or form a career. It was fixing computers for friends. And this was something that my brother had kind of gifted to me when we were kids. We were extraordinarily poor, and we would go and pick up pieces from thrift stores, and we'd put them together and we would build computers. And so friends of mine recognized Ash has a niche for computers. And one of my friends reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do some independent work at the company that he worked at. They needed some contractors to do some small bits of pieces of the work that they were up to. And I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. And it was front end development, essentially. It was data transfer and a number of other things. And I said, yes. I said, sure, why not? Let's do it. And it was a 3-week contract that actually turned into a full-time job. And how that happened is my curiosity, really. So when I got to the company, I was asking a ridiculous number of questions. And for anyone who knows what quality engineering is like, they recognize that asking questions is one of the number one qualities of a quality engineer. And so I had no purview into what quality engineering was at the time. And the CTO actually approached my desk and he said, hey, come upstairs and let's have a meeting really quick. And I thought I was gonna get fired, to be honest. But he sat me down and he said, the level of questioning that you're doing is 100% within the wheelhouse of those who do quality engineering. Have you ever heard of that before? And I said, no, I've never heard of QE before. And he explained to me in a short amount of time what it was and said that it'd be a steep learning curve, but he was willing to mentor and coach me through it if I was willing. And he had paired me with the other quality engineers, there were 2 at the time, to do so. And I said yes, and I jumped on and never looked back.
Wow. Again, that's a different transition. And sometimes we feel like sometimes opportunities just knock our door. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
just that being curious and trying to learn whatever we could at that instant, I think will spark whatever that we really like to do. And I think
Yeah.
some people, like, we might not even realize that people are always looking what we are doing and how curious we are. And sometimes people think that, hey, like, you always need to know what you want to do right out of college. And sometimes not, like, 90% of the students don't really know. And especially
No.
I talk with a lot of students for my research, and 90% of them, hey, like, no, Venki, this is what I got a degree in, but I still haven't figured out what I wanted to do in my career. And one thing I'm starting to see as I was trying to get into this whole entrepreneurial mindset is, and you touched a little bit, being entrepreneurial, having an entrepreneurial mind. And then I started to realize very recently, Ash, if you have an entrepreneurial mind, you're naturally a curious person, and you're
Hmm.
a problem solver. And
Hmm.
it's almost like you doesn't even have to be an entrepreneur yourself, but
Yeah.
that just that entrepreneurial mindset is so critical for being a great employee at your company and being innovative and being that critical thinker. What do you
Hmm.
think about that?
I think that's an incredibly important skill. And I'm going to call it a skill because it grows with confidence and it grows with fostering and all of those amazing things that help us to see the small successes. Because the reality about our progress, and even I'll use my story as an example, is I didn't know until I did. I didn't know I could until I could, right? And it just goes into that sentiment of you don't know what you don't know, but you're never going to know unless you question that. And staying forever curious and really driving for those answers, recognizing that your answers are always going to be incomplete. And I think that that's what really helped me to pivot often, is the fact that the answer is always incomplete. I'm now the head of D&I. Is that answer complete? No, it's not. And it continues to evolve and shift as I go. And I'm open to that based off of the curiosity of how far can I push this? How far can I go and continue to be an asset to the businesses that I work within, but also be true to myself.
Wow. Again, being true to yourself and then trying to explore the inner curiosity. I think that's the most important thing, whether we become whatever, life throws at us, but being that, having that inner curiosity. And now you also mentioned that, hey, this might me that phase of where I wanted to go. And I think this is a direction that's taking me right now. And for
Mhm.
some people, and especially for young students, it's kind of like, really hard to see that, the vision at that early stage. But like, that, I mean, again, it's similar journey for every student. And right out of the college, I didn't know what to do, but I got an opportunity to become a software engineer. Okay, like, let me take that opportunity and see what it looks like. Because
Mhm.
sometimes what I see is students is, hey, like, I wanted to become that, but they overlook the opportunities that are knocking their door. Sometimes I
Yep.
always tell them, you know what, like, take every opportunity that comes your way, so that you get to explore more with those opportunities.
Mhm.
So what do you suggest students who are just coming out of college, and especially right now because of COVID-19, we are seeing so many challenges that students are facing, and especially now you're a leader at a company. So what do you
Mhm.
think, from the overall perspective of companies hiring students, especially during this whole pandemic, is going to have an impact on students, and how should they approach that?
Yeah, this the state that we're in right now can be a real droll outlook on a number of plans that we've potentially made. One of the things that I would say is never stay still. And I say that because you'll hear me say this often. It's a lot more difficult to steer a car in park than it is to steer one in motion, and using your own momentum to be able to create and join the path that's right for you. You really can't determine what's in front of you until you get there. Again, I know I'm speaking in a lot of parables here, but there's a reason we say this individual's really driven, right? I'll go back to the car analogy. They're really driven, they're driving their success. Move when you're moving, it's a lot easier to be able to decipher what is not versus what is. This is not for me. It's okay to recognize, we can even call them failures, but I would say that they're more so opportunities to understand what is not for you. and continue to keep that mindset as we go, that you're going to need to test a lot, explore a lot, understand what's in front of you in order to recognize what is and is not going to be the continual path for you. And that's really been what my career is about, is continuing to drive forward and say, I have these core skills and these core interests that are helping drive what my next move is. And as I mentioned from the beginning, I knew about diversity and inclusion and that it was a huge part of my career from the moment I got to college. And I would even say even before then, because if we're looking at our life from that experience, we know what drives us. What regularly drove me was knowing that, one, I was someone who was not okay with no. Especially all the no's that stood in front of me around the stats and the data. No, you can't be a software engineer as a Black woman. No, you can't be the head of D&I. You can't do these other things, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of no's in front of us, especially at a young age. And I think that seeking for the yes is really what will continue to help us grow there. So don't be dismayed by COVID and what's going on right now. There is a lot of opportunity in front. Just don't stay still. And that's not to say that we always have to be driving, because we need those moments of safety. We need those moments of pause to be able to stop and consider. But I also think that we can do that still being driven.
Wow, that's just fascinating to listen to your answer for that question, Ash. Thanks for sharing that. And now, slowly transitioning into your current role as a head of diversity and inclusion. And how did you got that opportunity? And what was your initial feeling? That, hey, like you know what? Do you always wanted to become a leader in diversity and inclusion? Because now you have that like little bit of background and you shared that at BYU. Hey, like I was thinking about it, but like, did you always knew that you're going in that direction?
No, no, this was another thing that I happened upon. And it was because of my continuous curiosity. I was always the only one in the room. And especially once I got into engineering, being the only one in the room really helped me to continue to seek for further understanding. Why? Why am I the only one in the room? Why are there so few women in engineering? Why are there so few Black women in engineering? And I think that that was the biggest one, is there I could be in a conference for engineering that was focused on women and be one of a couple Black women, and recognizing there's the underrepresented of the underrepresented in those spaces. And so as I grew my engineering career, I was regularly on the other side, so outside of work, making sure that I was staying connected to the community that I knew was lacking. And that was being in circles with other Black women engineers, making sure that there was mentorship opportunities for us, making sure there was coaching opportunities. So through those experiences, I became a coach, I became a mentor, to make sure there was continual conversation as to how we could be successful in this role that didn't have too many of us. And that grew into a consultancy. I know this sounds crazy, but I started my own consultancy where I was then pitching to businesses. Here's how you grow your Black talent. Here's how you grow other women in engineering. Here's how you grow your LGBTQ community. Here's how you grow your differently abled. And just really helping keep the focus on what was driving me, which was seeing more of myself in the businesses that I was working with. And when I got around to Credit Karma played such a important role in my upbringing altogether. I actually joined Credit Karma when I was in college, when I was at BYU, because I needed to get an apartment. And I had no idea about my credit score. And I remember joining it and being devastated that the number was so low. I'll be very transparent. It was so low, and there were very few opportunities for me because it was low. Reaching into that story, recognizing that it's not a singular experience for me. Other Black women were having a similar experience. And so just regularly going with this data of, okay, so credit scores low, not having the opportunities to grow and learn within a number of spaces, inclusive of engineering, etc. What does that, where does that place me? And I think that the curiosity around all of those areas helped me build a story and a narrative that I was bringing continuously to the table around how do we continue to fortify this underrepresentation and build more opportunities for those folks. And so when Credit Karma came around, it was a no-brainer because I had used that technology to be able to tell a portion of my success story. And now I work at that company and I'm able to tell it internally and see the byproduct of that as we put out more products to make sure we're reaching into those communities as well. And so it's a full circle story, if you will, where now I'm here and I'm working exclusively with the diversity, equity, and inclusion um, efforts at the company to make sure that we're not missing a part of that narrative any longer. And I continue to do not only for the company but for those outside, which is why I feel like why I'm probably here as well, is to tell that story of this is how we continue to learn and grow and how we continue to push forward and drive. Um, and yeah, that's how I landed as the head of D&I.
That's just an incredible story. How you had an experience like years ago at college that propelled you somehow to kind of like look at different things and see how the community can like really be uplifted. I think that's just amazing, Ash. And now you're working in diversity and inclusion, and then you're also helping other organizations with your consultancy. So anybody who's listening to our podcast or our show, what would you tell any professional who is working in a company or even a business leader who is working for a company who's thinking about, and especially now during this last 3-4 months, if you are looking at the whole environment, it's kind of like no, hey, like no, we need diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has been there for years that people are talking about it, and then maybe many organizations didn't know how to take advantage of it, and maybe people might not know the frameworks. And like, what would you tell them who wanted to get started in this space and who wanted to help support their employees using these tools?
Using these tools, the first thing I would say is listening is key. And I think that right now is a prime example of how we can be actively listening about what is necessary within our workspaces, within our own homes, within our own ideologies, to get sorted so that we're able to make better decisions as people and as contributors within our business. When we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion from an organizational standpoint, the reality and the data has always pointed to the fact that more diverse teams are equitable. And it's awe-inspiring of how the data genuinely shows that upward tick when the efforts are made, and yet so few opportunities are taken to really gather in on that effort and see it move within individual orgs. And so what I would say is that taking any steps in this direction is going to be the right step right now. If you haven't made any in the past, take one, because what we're going to eventually find is that you're very far behind. These last few months, these last few weeks have really pushed us past the check the box, this is a like to have. And to be completely honest and fair, there's so much that can come out of the experiences of your underrepresented demographics that can build your personal product, but also build you as a human. When we think about even where you came from, Binti, and where students are coming from, if we're not being inclusive of those stories, we're really missing out on an opportunity to serve the public of which we're building for. And from a technology perspective, technology mimics its creator. And so if we want to see our technology in as many hands as possible, then we need to recognize that a lot of that goes into who's building it and how much of their experiences are driving what the public experience is going to be overall. And so, yeah, I'll say that it's a big job, but all of us in together is really going to help make those numbers better and make the experience better. It's going to be a lot of work as well, but we can do it.
Absolutely. I think your everything is great there. Everything that you talked about diversity and inclusion, and then how companies can leverage even their existing employees. And you brought up a very, very good point. Just listening to their employees more and seeing where their pain points are, I think, I mean, it's a part of it, right? It's a
Hmm.
part of it. And it's just awesome to hear some great things from leaders like you, who are especially focused on this topic, and then how you're driving employee the whole satisfaction, because that's super important. Because we are dealing with, now the world has become virtual. Like, now how do you like make it even much better for employees? Now it's even much critical to listen to your employees more. So how do you think this whole virtual world has impacted towards diversity and inclusion? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the virtual world has actually done more for us than we think right now. And I'll give you an example. For those who are listening in, I am sitting in my bed. There's a reason I'm sitting in my bed. It's because my 9-month-old daughter is playing on the bed here with me. And the reality about that is, I'm now on a video call where I've welcomed you all into my room. That is what the virtual space has done. It has brought the human aspect of work directly in the face of what we are experiencing at home, which means this is now a space where we have to be mindful that we're all human. We have to be mindful that they're just, I mean, a leaf blower just started going off in my backyard, and that's a real thing. And it brings a level of empathy that we were able to mask when we were in the office before. And so I think that this virtual experience, what it's done is it's leveled all of us to a place where we're all seeking for belonging and empathy, right? And it allows us to think of, I really need your empathy here because of X, Y, or Z. Now imagine doing that from a level of equity for someone who's underrepresented. They need that level of empathy all the time, and they always have. And so it gives you new data to be able to take back and say, that one time when I was supposed to have a mission critical meeting and my infant daughter was crying her head off and I needed to, console her, the other people on the call were likely annoyed, and I need that empathy right now. That's the level of empathy we need to bring to the table when we're encountering and engaging with all folks, and see who's really missing from the room now, because we're all begging for that inclusion and that belonging factor.
Wow, again, great answer for that question. And how we are more human than anything, right? Like, with the whole virtual world and how we are set up right now, working from homes and connecting and leveraging technology. Just imagine 20 years ago, if the same thing have happened, how our lives would be, and now how they are. And like, maybe we'll see a lot of even work from home. Definitely, I think looking at all these major companies shifting their strategies of how to enable their employees work from home even more, I think definitely has going to play a bigger role going forward. So, what do you think from a human relationship standpoint, from an employee and employee relationship standpoint, from a virtual world, that we are going to see in the next few years? Do you think more and more companies are going to adopt and embrace all these great things, how this virtual world has impacted us?
I think we've already seen that that's going to be the trend. Companies like Twitter, even Facebook has plans to be more virtual and accommodating to the work from home setup. And I think that it's just going to open our eyes to more opportunity. When we think about some of the areas where we weren't able to tap some of the diverse individuals that we would likely benefit from having within our workforce, a lot of that had to do with distance. And so this virtual space is going to allow us to close some of that distance, to be able to start hiring from different areas of the country and of the world. And I think it's for the betterment of what we're trying to accomplish here from a technological standpoint, which is driving up inclusivity and engagement, and also creating a narrative within our lives and within our workplaces where we are accommodating, we're empathetic, we're diverse, not only in physical diversity, but mental, emotional, etc. diversity. And we want to make sure that we're always keeping an eye to that. So I think we're trending in the right direction.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned a little bit about like having that level set field of, like,
Hmm.
no, because we are virtual right now, and everybody has an equal opportunity to connect with other people and even get those opportunities that they might not otherwise get it.
Hmm.
So I had such a pleasure talking to you today, Ash. And
Yeah.
do you have any message, final message for our audience to take away from our talk today?
Yeah, I would say um, keep your head up. I always tell my sister, eyes up, because when we're looking at our feet, we can't see what's in front of us. So um, you've got it. The students, I mean, I'm so proud of all the students who are out there continuing in this journey, and I'm encouraging them to keep hope and to keep their head up.
Mm. I think that's just such a great message for all the students who are coming out of college or who are still in college, who wanted to get out there and like challenge and even solve the, like we have seen a lot of challenges that are coming out right
Hmm.
now because of pandemic. And sometimes even when I'm talking to other professionals on the podcast, they're saying, you know what, like I thought this is this has made my life worse, but in fact what I kind of starting to realize now is it challenged me to come out of my comfort zone. Otherwise,
Hmm.
I would have gone in a linear path. Now I'm thinking
Hmm.
almost an exponential path. Otherwise, I
Yep.
would still go in that direction, but it has really challenged to come out of my own comfort zone and get the solutions that I would not otherwise think about. So I think
Hmm.
that's how I'm starting to hear and see a pattern. Everybody is starting to feel it
Yeah.
and see that. So where can our audience connect with you, Ash, if they would love to connect with you and talk to you more?
If they would love to connect with me, I would love to connect with them. And they can find me on LinkedIn / Ash Coleman, or on Twitter, Ash Coleman 30.
Thank you so much. I had such a pleasure talking to you and learning about your story and all the great things that you're doing. All the very best. And thank you so much for coming on to our show today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.